Keravan Gorjistani was our correspondent in Washington. She was at President Biden's briefing. She joins us now live. Keravan, Joe Biden clearly moved by what has happened.
Yes, he was definitely moved and really taking in the seriousness of what has just happened. The fact that there were 12 U.S. service members who were killed today in that attack. It's been 18 months since the U.S. Hadn't lost a service member in Afghanistan. So it is a very difficult day. It's a day that Joe Biden was very worried about. This is why he wanted to get out as fast as possible. He knew that there was an imminent threat, but you really saw the president showing what he's been known for, that empathy. He spoke about understanding what the families of those service members were possibly feeling right now. He spoke about, of course, his dead son, Bo, talked about how you felt like you were sucked into a black hole that you felt you couldn't get out of when you lost a child in these circumstances. It's even worse. And so he had that moment of Joe Biden, the consoler in chief. He also held a moment of silence towards the end of his speech before taking those questions. And you felt that it was a little bit hard for him to pick up after that minute of silence. But as we heard in the soundbite that you just played, he was also very forceful with that message to the attackers, to those who carried out those attacks, telling them that the U.S. would hunt them down and make them pay, that the U.S. would decide in its own time where and when it wants to respond, to retaliate. But first, again, the mission. The mission is to get out those people as quickly as possible, those American citizens who are still there, and also the remaining troops, because by August 31st, it's not just the evacuation of civilians, of those Americans, of those SIV applicants, it's also the full withdrawal of the U.S. military.
Indeed, and whilst there was that sense that Biden was extremely moved and obviously extremely steadfast and clear there would be a reprisal against ISIS-K, he was also very clear that the mission is one that he is standing by and it continues.
He was actually asked overall whether he took any responsibility for what had happened. And he said, yes, I take full responsibility basically for all that has happened because I made the decision to keep on with that deal to pull out that Donald Trump had signed. But he said that he stood by his decision to pull out, and he stood by his decision also to have that withdrawal end on August 31st. And he fell back on a message and on a position that he has repeated over and over again. He hasn't wavered in that message, which is, if I had decided not to follow through with that deal to pull out, I would have had to send thousands more troops, thousands more of American women and men into Afghanistan because the Taliban had a deal with the United States, which was that we would get out. And if we hadn't gotten out, this situation would have happened possibly much earlier. And so he feels that despite the situation, despite the tragedy of today, that overall his decision was the right one. There will obviously be questions about how that pullout was executed. That is really the focus of the criticism here in Washington. But right now, the president says that even with the tragedy, this was the right thing to do. The U.S. needed to get out, needed to end this 20-year war, and needed to get those U.S. troops. He wanted to do it sooner than later to avoid what we've seen today.
Keravan Gorjistani in Washington. Thank you very much indeed.